to the cloud. Okay, great. Okay, so we're looking at Tehillim number 4. So I'm going to just read it to you in English. And I really find reading it in English isn't even so easy. Okay, so it is Lam Natseach. Well, here I'll say this part in Hebrew. Lam Natseach benigi nos mizmor leDavid. So which is very nice. Lam Natseach means conductor. Okay, so what kind of conductor am I talking about?
Conductor of the world.
Yes, conductor of the world. And when we're using the word lam natseach, we actually mean like the conductor of an orchestra. So what's so special about a conductor of an orchestra? What's so amazing about that?
He controls the playing, the doing, the keep quiet, carry on, you do this, you do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So like he's pointing out like who should be doing what and where. And what's so interesting about the instruments that he's conducting?
And all got different sounds.
Yes. You know, like that's a very hard thing to do. Like if you really stop and you think about it, right? To know like when a loud sound and a soft sound and a this sound and a that sound and then how to combine them. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to have this da, 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 and then there's like a little triangle goes ding, you know? And it just makes the big difference, right? Or the flute, or there's 8 violinists. And you know what I mean? Like if you think about it, it takes an incredible skill set. So when we say that Hashem is the conductor of the world and he's conducting each and every one of us is a different instrument. And each and every one of us has a little different kind of sound on the violin that we are, or we're a drum, or we're a this or that. And Hashem knows exactly when this one has to be here and when that one has to be there and how to put it all together, right? So that each musical instrument has its time, has its moment, has its potential for greatness. Like each instrument is like do 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 do, right? They have all these like famous stories with Toscanini. I think he was a famous conductor, and somebody went to interview him, and he was listening on the radio to the orchestra. And when the reporter was talking to him, he said, shh, shh. I noticed something. And he said, what? He said, there really is 8 violinists usually. I'm just making a number, but I know there's only 7. And the reporter was like, that's incredible. Like, that's not even possible. How could any human being notice over the radio, right? And then the next day he called up the orchestra. He verified the story. It was true. He could see. So that's like Hashem on a scale times a billion gazillion more, right? Hashem is orchestrating 7 billion people all at the same time, if not more today, right? So when we say like lam natseach, okay, so here Hashem, look at what David is saying. He's saying like lam natseach, the conductor of the world, benigi nos, that you with songs, with beautiful lyrics. Mizmor leDavid, a song to David. So if I said that kind of sentence, like conductor of the world with your beautiful songs, sing the song of Amita, like what would you be thinking I'm about to say? Would I be thinking about Amita as a happy life or Amita as a sad life? Like what would you think I'm talking about now? What episode am I about to bring in? Yeah, unmute. Like this class needs participation. Participation. Okay, go ahead.
Happy for sure.
Yes, you would think happy for sure. We're talking about melodies and conductor. You would think it's very, very happy. But it's interesting because the next part of the Tehillim, like the next couple sentences, are not. Like they kind of talk about the stress and the pain that David HaMelech goes in, and then it always kind of ends with the last idea. What's the last idea? I have Emunah in you, you're going to save me, it's all going to be good. So I just want to talk to you about this kapitel. This Tehillim number 4 is supposed to be a good Tehillim to say if you can't fall asleep. Okay, next week we'll get to the half that talks about the not falling asleep. It's just a good thing to know. Like I always laugh, right? By the time you got old enough that your kids were out of the house and you finally would be able to sleep, your hormones go cuckoo and you can't sleep. I was like, that's Hashem's sense of humor, like what's going on here? Like finally I could get a good night's sleep. then your hormones and your nerves and everything are going crazy. So it's just good to know that there is a sleeping pill and there is this Tehillim. Okay, so I'm just giving you that as the heads up. Okay, so now, okay, so here's what I want to tell you. Okay, so here we're gonna start getting into the meat and potatoes. But what was interesting is that you were looking for this happy kind of Tehillim, and then there's always this conflict in the middle. And David talks about his feelings and the conflict of life. So I actually appreciate that, because what that means is that we don't have to hold everything in. You know, like sometimes like we all want to pretend it's all good. Gamzu the Tova, it's all good, it's all good. It is all good. And David Melch says, in the end, it is all good. But this is how I feel, Hashem, right? And I trust you'll help me, but I need to articulate my feelings to you, Hashem. And I think that's very beautiful. Like, because sometimes I think, you know, we're not allowed to complain. We're not allowed to kvetch. No, you're going to kvetch and complain in a context. The context is that at the end, you are the conductor of the most beautiful music. And sometimes you give me a part to play that's like, da, 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 da. You know, it seems very scary and very hard. I have to tell you how I feel about it, Hashem. In the end, I know you will, you know, lay me down to sleep and I can be secure with you. But let me articulate the feelings that I'm having. And I think that's very important for all of us, right? And it's good to know, like, you need a good friend. Hashem is a good friend, and you need to talk to him. You need to really tell him, like, this hurts, this, that, I'm confused. I want to do the right thing. Please give me the strength. Please give me the clarity. And that's what David HaMelech is speaking about. That's what he's talking about. So now let me tell you the next couple sentences. So the next thing he says is, answer me when I call, O God, my vindicator, right? You freed me from distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer, all right? And then he says, you men, how long will my glory be mocked? Will you love illusions, have recourse to frauds, Selah? Like, in other words, he's calling out to Hashem, like, people are making fun of me, right? And it's very hurtful, and people are misunderstanding me. Please, Hashem, like, you don't love this fake news, so to speak. You don't love these fake narratives. Please, please, like, there has to be like I don't know if the word recourse is like a consequence. There has to be a consequence to these frauds. Like, to people who are saying bad things about David, people are saying, mocking him. And he's saying, like, really, Hashem, like, this isn't easy. You know, this, it hurts, and it's untrue, right? So please, like, put an end to this. And then it says, know that the Lord singles out the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. And then he's like, it's almost like he goes back and forth. And that's how I think we all feel. Like, we're like, Hashem, we're in so much pain, and can you stop this pain? And then it's like, but I know you will. You know, like, I think that's how we all feel. Like, okay, but when will you stop it? I know you're going to do it, but when will it stop? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like a conflict that tears us. And that's true. So we have Amunah, but there's a part of us that's called human, right? And there's a part of us that has real feelings. And David HaMelech saying, like, you know, you're like, the good guy's supposed to win. So when's the end of this? Like, when is the bad guy finally going to pay his dues? Do you know what I mean? This is what he's asking. And he's saying, like, I do believe, you know, I believe you'll do it, but this is my pain in the picture. So tremble and sin no more. Oh, no, sorry. So next one is, know that we said that Hashem will single out the tzaddikim. He will listen to you in the end. So yes, I do have pain. I am wondering, why are the bad guys not getting punished? Take a deep breath. But I know, Hashem, you will take care of me, right? And you will listen to me. So tremble and sin no more. Ponder it on your bed and sigh. Okay, so what's going to be here? So tremble and sin no more. Okay, so you know what, like, realize Hashem has his day of justice. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to make boo-boos. I'm going to be, you know, stick it out with you, Hashem. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm going to go to sleep. Okay, and then we'll learn more exactly what all these things mean. So let's just go through it again here. Okay, so let's get into more meat and potatoes here. Okay, so he's saying, like this, like David saying to Hashem, like, it's hard for me to sleep. Anybody have that? Like if somebody hurt your feelings, I had this happen a little bit, like somebody did something and then I can't sleep at night. Anybody else have that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what do? You're like thinking it over and over and over and over and over and over and over in your head. What's David HaMelech saying? He hands it over to Hashem. Like he finally says, you know what, forget it. Okay. You are God. I'm going to put it back to where it belongs. And I'll explain it to you as we go through the Tehillim, where he comes up with this idea. Like, it's like, I'm giving it back to you, Hashem. This is all from you. It's for you. This is as best as I could do. I daven to you to help me. And now I'm going to bed. And I will not, like, women like to ruminate. We chew on the bone. We go over it 100 times. You ever go to tell your husband these things and he goes, you've already said that, dear. Anybody ever had that? All right. You've already told me that. I think it's time to stop talking about it. But like we want to like, right? Because you want this like resolution. And sometimes you're not going to get the resolution when you want the resolution. That's all. It's just not going to happen. Even though you really want it, you don't understand. But Hashem's saying, sorry, this is not the time yet. Okay. Now, all right. So, and right. And then we say at the end, he says, okay, I know you're going to help me. So if you really look at this Tehillim, and this really, I'm going to be honest with you, this Tehillim is really very much similar to all the Tehillims that he writes. He always starts off with, it's a song. He praises Hashem. I know Hashem. This is exactly what we talk about when we say prayer and the AAA. Right? When you need help, your car broke down, you call the CAA. But when you need help and you have to daven, you do the AAA. So what's the AAA? First you appreciate, right? And you acknowledge. First you acknowledge Hashem. You acknowledge him. And that's what he does when he says, Lam natseach mizmor. And then you ask. Then he starts saying, these guys are picking on me and this one's making fun of me. Please, I know you'll answer me. Help me, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, he appreciates and he says, you know what, Hashem, thank you. You've always been there for me. You will always be there for me. So if somebody would ask you, like, what is Tehillim made out of? That's what you would say Tehillim is made out of. So Tehillim is very much a prayer. I just wanted to say a big hi to Talia. I was actually thinking about you, Talia, and I was going to actually send you an email today. And look how Hashem answered my tefillos. And also to Gabriella. For some reason, I'm going to text them. And where are you? Okay. And Baruch Hashem, you're here. Yay. Okay. So now here, let's go. So here we're going to go. So the AAA, which I thought was a beautiful idea. So now, usually when you look at a Tehillim, you want to know the history behind it. You want to find out when was it written, because that gives you a lot of insight inside of it. So there are two opinions on when this was written. Okay, so the Radak tells us this was written when David HaMelech was running away from his son Absalom. So this is probably one of the hardest periods in David HaMelech's life. He's an older person. He's like, they're already starting to think like who's going to be the next king and who was supposed to be the next king. Shlomo HaMelech. Absalom gets wind of it and he's like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to actually dethrone my own father. Okay, and it's terrible. Like there's a movement among the Jewish people to really get rid of David, and it becomes a very scary episode in history. And David is really on the run, literally having to run from the palace and run away from his son and run away from all these people who want to kill him. Like that is a terrible, terrible time. Like that's probably one of the worst times in David HaMelech's life. So they say, but look how great he is, because most people, when they're under tons and tons and tons of stress, all they can do is stay afloat. Like they can't really think about too much more. They're just like just grasping in straws, like just to make it through the day, right? But here, David HaMelech, whatever happens to him is always in his mind connected to Hashem. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's always a conversation with Hashem. It's always, Hashem, I can't go through this without you. It's never, let me just get through the next minute. It's no, this is painful, but I need you. He will not lose focus on Hashem. And I think this is probably one of the greatest gifts he's giving us. Okay, it's a great gift that he's giving us. And this is why Tehillim, when do you say Tehillim? Usually in the most, it's interesting. When do you say Tehillim? What are the times? Like, unmute and tell me times that you realize people say Tehillim. It's just a very interesting concept. So when have you seen people say Tehillim?
Times of stress.
Okay, times of stress.
When somebody's sick.
When someone is sick. What else? You're at places. There's certain places you've been
When
to where
someone is getting
Now, for
married.
instance,
yes, when someone is getting married, do you realize that there's
Mm,
Tehillim
I'm gonna
usually
say
on every
that.
prayer when someone's getting married? And they always say a kapitel Tehillim at a levaya, right? So in other words, like Tehillim, it has its times of amazing good, right? A wedding is a real happy, good time. And we say Tehillim then, and then we say Tehillim, right? Sometimes when things are really bad, we say Tehillim in appreciation. We say Tehillim when we're lonely. Like you're saying Tehillim on all time periods, because that's what David HaMelech is trying to tell you. Wherever, whenever, keep the focus with Hashem there with you. That is how you will navigate your life. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the way to do it. So today you're lucky because mostly I don't know anyone who doesn't have a cell phone. Every one of us has a cell phone, and you can download an app, right? It's like the Book of Tehillim. It's free. Okay, so you can download it. It's a very good thing to have in your thing. Wait, hold on. Let me just see. Someone just sent something in the chat. Okay, someone told you, I'm a little bit mixed up. Someone told you when she is down, it's a good time to think of others who need her and how she could help them. That's a good idea. That's a good idea too. Okay, but I'm saying now, so these are good. This is what David HaMelech is telling us, okay? Perfect. So you find Hashem and you build a relationship with him in all of these different times. Now, this was the Radak. So Radak says it's during the time of Shalom. Okay, now the Malbim is going to give you a whole different picture. Okay, he's saying historically it was a very different time. And this historical time is important for us to focus on, and we're going to learn a lot of good lessons from it. So he says, this is an interesting idea that when David HaMelech was king, and after he married Bathsheba, right? So, you know, there's a lot of controversy over this concept of David HaMelech with Bathsheba and what exactly happened and how he sent her husband to the front line and then he was killed, but really her husband was considered someone who was a mored b'malchus. He rebelled against the king. Like there's a lot of mystery and depth and a very easy ability to look at the story and to judge David HaMelech unfavorably, okay? The Torah tells you for who David HaMelech was, like he's like this great, incredible tzaddik. The Torah tells you Hashem is very, very picky with tzaddikim, okay? Every move they make, you know, to the right or to the left is consequential. You know, you're more forgiving, you know, like the kid who's supposed to get an A+ on every single test, you're going to be picky on his test, right? You're going to be very picky on the test, right? This kid is like, you know, always get 100+2, you know? So you're going to really look at the test, but the kid who you know is really struggling and they're working hard and they're trying, they're just not the big genius, you know, you give them that extra half a point. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like we're going to move around with it. We're going to be more flexible. But when it comes to a tzaddik, it's like bang on. You got to be bang on. So the Torah tells you anyone who says that David sinned is not really correct. But for who David was, right? The same like Moshe. Like, what's the big deal? So he hit the rock. Okay, is that the end of the whole world? It wasn't the end of the world, all right? The Jewish people got their water anyway. But what was the problem? It was a little less of a Kiddush Hashem. But for Moshe, that's bum, 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 bum. Do you see what I mean? For David, it's a little less of a Kiddush Hashem. Bum, 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 bum. Like it just ripples in a different way. Okay? So even after David, who is considered a real Baal Tshuva, he's considered a real Baal Tshuva. He cried about it. He davened Hashem about it. And Hashem even forgave him. The certain people in the Jewish people always ribbed him. Always said everything that was happening that was bad was because David sinned. It was because David sinned. Do you know what I mean? And they kept bringing it up. And that's that line when it says, you know, like Hashem, like, you know, vindicate me. And how long are people going to, you know, keep mocking me, right? So Malbim says this happened after the story of Bathsheba. There was a very bad famine in Israel for 3 years. Right? For 3 long years, people are suffering. They don't have enough food. And the Malbim says that during that period, the scoffers, so what's the word scoffers mean? Who's a scoffer? What?
Mocking.
The people who were
Yeah,
negative.
negative, mocking, people who make fun of other people. Now tell me, why would people make fun? Like usually, like the person who makes fun of everything, the cynic, why is he doing that?
Because he thinks he's clever.
He thinks he's very clever, and he's like always like pushing everything onto somebody else. Like he deflects any responsibility from him. It's like, me? Like, that's not about me. You're the loser. You know what I mean? They're the loser. They're the this. It's their fault. It's this one's fault. And they mock the system, and they mock the principal. They mock the teacher. Because if I mock these people, I don't have to listen to these people. Right? And I'm better than these people. So the Malbim said during those 3 years, the scoffers would say, all of this is happening because of the sin of David HaMelech with Bathsheba. Okay? So it just never left David. It just never left him. No matter how much he did tshuva, no matter how much he tried to be, rectify what could possibly be scoffed at, so to speak, people just wouldn't let it go. They wouldn't move on from this reality. And he really wants to extricate himself. And he wants to get out of this. But instead, like, it's crazy. Like David HaMelech says, why is there a famine? Hashem, okay, it's not because of me. I know it's not because of me. I did tshuva. So why is everybody making fun of me? Like, what is it? So the bracha is, David could talk to Hashem and Hashem could answer. Okay, these are the days when you have prophecy. Like, how live I? Like, please Hashem, we want Mashiach just for that reason, so we could really have pure clarity. Today, we are like, the world is really, it's like a darkness. It's no joke. I think we live in a huge fog. Like, the more you're listening to the news and the more you see things, we're in a fog. Like, we're mamish have been transferred into this fog where like there's almost no clarity. So David HaMelech says to Hashem, please, they're all making fun. Everybody's saying that this famine for 3 years is my fault. They're all blaming me. Hashem, I did tshuva. I don't know what this is. So Hashem says, this is all happening because of Shaul HaMelech. Who is Shaul HaMelech? Who's King Saul? You have to unmute. You have to unmute if you want to answer. Sandy, you want to answer? Because I see that you want to. So can
His
you?
son.
So not his son, close. That's Shlomo HaMelech.
Oh,
Shaul HaMelech is
His brother?
No,
not
no.
his brother.
Not-
Good. I'm glad everybody's like, you're trying.
he's not a relative.
He is his
He's a
father.
prophet.
Shaul HaMelech, it's good that we're talking about this, was the king before David HaMelech. Okay, the first king of the Jewish people, his name was Shaul HaMelech. He makes a big boo-boo. He was supposed to destroy all of Amalek. Right? Hashem said, kill everything and everyone, including, yes, father of Yonatan, excellent. Kill everything, like destroy everything. And at the end, like, he didn't have enough, what's the word? Strength, because there were people who said, no, keep the animals alive, blah, 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 who used them for karbonos, and they were big, hardy animals. So he kept them alive, and he didn't listen to what Hashem wanted. And the people of Amalek, they could morph. It ended up like that the queen of Amalek slept with the king of Amalek that night. She was morphed as like an animal he didn't know, and she ended up giving birth to a son. And this city of the whole legacy of Amalek kept on forever, and they've been the biggest curse to the Jewish people. For that reason, he lost his right to be the king. All right. So what happens? Remember the story with Goliath? Does everybody remember that story? So it's from the Tanakh, right? This is Torah. It's not just Goliath. Remember Rus? Who remembers Rus and her sister? Her name was Oprah, right?
Yeah.
So she was the mother of Goliath. Okay. So now Goliath comes and he's like tormenting the Jewish people. Every day he'd come with the big sword, the giant, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people, and nobody stood up against him. Okay, so it was very, very demoralizing, and people were really afraid of him. So Shaul HaMelech said, if anyone will stand up to Goliath and kill Goliath, he will have the right to marry my daughter, the princess Michal. And guess what happened? Remember the story, David HaMelech with his slingshot? Okay, he goes with his slingshot, and Hashem makes this big, miracle that instead of Goliath, first of all, that he killed Goliath, but instead of Goliath falling this way, he fell this way, and then David is able to take his sword and chop off his head, and it's all this big, and he becomes the big hero. But unfortunately, Shaul realizes that he is going to lose the kingship, and it's going to go to David HaMelech, and he starts to become, unfortunately, a little paranoid. It becomes this whole paranoia. Okay, so this is the story. So what happens? I'm giving you the background so you know what's going on. So Shaul, they sense, Michal, David's Melech's wife, she senses this is not good. And Talia wrote, Yonatan, who was the son of Shaul HaMelech, is David's best friend. And they start telling David, you better get out of here because it looks like our father is going to try to kill you. The intrigue, palace intrigue, what goes on here, what this one person had to go through. And David HaMelech honestly did not want to be the king of the Jewish people. He was a shepherd. He had a simple life. He didn't need this. You know what I mean? So now he's on the run. He goes to a city called Nov, Ir HaKohanim. Okay, so this is a really crazy story. Now, he doesn't want to say the dirty laundry of the family. He doesn't want the Jewish people to know that Shaul is losing it and that he is trying to kill David. So he goes to this city, which was I think it was this Kohanim lived there. I think 70 Kohanim, or 70 families of Kohanim. And he goes and he says to them, I'm on a mission from Shaul HaMelech, and I just need some food, and if you have any weapons. So it's interesting. They say, okay, we'll give you some food, David, but we're a city of Kohanim. We don't really have any weapons, but we do have the sword of Goliath and his shield from the time that you captured him. It was kept in this city of Nov. So David takes these things, okay? And off he goes. And this is for his own, he's running away. It's his own private use. So listen carefully what happened. Shaul HaMelech had spies all over Israel looking for David. When he realized that David had escaped, and how he escaped was his wife, Michal, helped him. She helped him out through a window. So when Shaul realizes that he escaped, now he's getting deranged. Now he's he's going to take my kingdom. He's going crazy. So he sent spies all over. And there's one spy he sent, his name is Doeg. So this Doeg Hadomi, he goes running to Shaul and he says, the city of Nov has given food and weapons to David HaMelech. So what would that mean? If you're a king and you're a little deranged and you're all paranoid and you hear that this city gave David HaMelech food and weapons, what would you think?
Everybody's going to get him.
Crazy.
Yes, everybody's going to get him, and the city is full of traitors. So what does he do? He goes to the city with this Doeg, right? He confronts the city, and the city says, what are you talking about? David HaMelech, he came here on a mission for you. That's what he told us. We are totally innocent. We don't know what you're talking about. And Shaul HaMelech said, no, you're traitors. And he told Doeg to wipe the entire city out. They killed all of these people, including the people who worked for them, who were called the Gavonim. Does anybody know who the Gavonim are? It's just interesting to know this stuff. The Gavonim was a Givon, it was a nation of the 7 nations, right? That the Jewish people, when they came into the land of Israel, they said this, either you leave, the Chiti and when you, right, or the Gershoni, they said this is what Hashem said, you can go into the cities and you can tell these people, either you leave or we have to kill you. because there was no way that the Jewish people could live with these people who were such incredible idol worshipers. There's no way to keep, like, Israel is a land of holiness. So it gave them a chance, like, you can escape, you can pack up your stuff, no one's going to chase you, no one's going to kill you, you just have to move out of this country. This now Hashem has turned the tables on who gets this piece of land, and you no longer have it. Right? It was given to the Jewish people. It's for us. It's our destiny. You have to leave. Either leave or fight. Okay, so a lot of them decide to fight. But this one group, the Givonim, they figured they're going to come and fool Yehoshua. So they dress up like as if they came from another foreign country. And they say, we're just living here. We're innocent. We don't do idol worship. We're not these people. We just came from another country. We have nowhere to go. Please, let's make a peace treaty. And they pretended that they were not the real inhabitants of the land. Okay. And guess what? Yehoshua believed them. And then he finds out that they lied, but he already made a treaty. So he said to them, you could live in the land as long as you are the water carriers and the wood choppers. You work with the Jewish people, you'll work for them, and we'll allow you to stay in the land. So that's why sometimes you look in the Torah and it always says, be kind to the wood chopper and right? You know what I'm talking about? It says it in the Torah. So Shaul HaMelech, not only did he kill every single person in the city of Nov, he killed them too. They were totally innocent. They had nothing to do with anything, and he wiped them out. Okay, do you see what goes on? So Hashem says to David HaMelech, because of Shaul's sin, you are going to suffer now for 3 years, the Jewish people, and have no rain, and there is a famine. And that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from you, David HaMelech. It comes because of Shaul. Meanwhile, Shaul's already dead. Shaul's dead. He's in heaven. So can I ask you a question? Or you ask me, what do you think about that story? What do you think about that story? What's the problem in the story that I just told you? David HaMelech and the Jewish people are suffering for 3 years because of whose sin? Yeah, Shaul's sin. And Shaul's not even alive. So what's the question?
Why is the entire nation suffering?
Yes, the question is zelo fair. Okay, that's what the question is. Okay, zelo fair. How could that be fair? Okay, this is what's going on here. How does that situation turn out to be fair? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. If you would have told me, even if it was David HaMelech's sin, even that, why shouldn't the entire nation suffer for David HaMelech's sin? Why is a group suffering for one person's sin? So think about it and see what you could tell me. Okay, Talia, why don't you unmute and say your answers? They're such good ones. Okay, Talia, unmute.
Gail,
Yes.
this seems, I don't know, maybe it's completely beyond what I can understand right now, but there's so much death in these stories.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why Hashem would allow so much death to be taking place over and over and over again. And I'm trying to understand, and I cannot make sense of it.
It's very, very hard, but the picture is a bigger picture, and that's what we're going to explain right now. I'm going to explain it to you. It's going to come out. So Talia, why is it?
Because, well, there's two things. First of all, they didn't defend them. And there's also a thought of King David is in a way kind of responsible for what happened.
It's interesting. That's an interesting part to the story, that I don't see that Hashem looks at it that way, because if anything, he was trying to be protective. Do you know what I mean? He was trying to be protective. He really was. The person who was the most responsible at the end is Doeg. The guy who, like, there's nothing worse than a Jew who snitches on other Jews. And Doeg, the guy who was that guy, he really had visions of climbing up, you know what I mean, in the palace. Do you know what I mean? So that's more, it was more him than it was David. But
David
tells you, the Torah tells you what you said. This is a very hard thing for us to understand, okay? But passivity, like, when you stand by and you see the moral structure of something completely decaying, and you see people doing things that are totally wrong, and you don't do anything about it, the Torah holds you responsible. So there is a personal responsibility that you have, and then there's a collective responsibility that you have to the Jewish people, and it's huge. So now you're going to say to me, okay, but what could people do? So even let's say for us today, like is there a lot of moral decay in the world? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can't.
Also,
Right? 1 second, Talia, 1 second. So there's a lot of moral decay in the world. There really is. So we have to do something, right? So one, if people say certain things to us, we have to say, you know what, I'm really not comfortable. I'm not. Like, I can't say to you that, yeah, this is great and we all agree and this is a real fun story. You know, if they can hear you. If it's just going to cause more machlokas, I would stay away from it. But if it's someone who you think could hear, or if somebody really like addresses it to you and says, well, what do you really believe? And you could say, I really believe that it isn't correct and I'm not comfortable with it. And I don't think these are good ideas. Okay. And two, the Torah tells you something very interesting, that you can pray. Like literally pray, like say to Hashem, the world is in a really bad place. You know, I don't want, like, please Hashem, like this is your world. These are your children. This is humanity. Like, please Hashem, help us change this story. So like in the days of Shaul HaMelech, you know, maybe, I don't know enough. Obviously Hashem is saying that they could have really protested. Do you know what I mean? That the people like look right now, it's very interesting. Like, you know, we're telling this story and it's like as if it was 1,000 years ago. Look right now what's going on around the world. Okay. So in major places where people are really tyrants and they're terrible, there are uprises, right? So right now in China, does anybody know what just happened in China? They're crazy. They're literally the most sick people on the earth. Like, we have to really daven to Hashem, never let them be in power over us. They're really sick. So they have this thing called zero COVID, you know? So their way of making sure there's zero COVID is they literally lock you into your home. Like, so there was an apartment building with 10 people. They soldered the doors shut so that nobody could exit. A fire broke out, and guess what? Everybody died because nobody could run out, right? To them, that's normal. Right? So now what are they doing? There are people protesting, demonstrating, and kol hakavod to them. And may Hashem Yisparach bless them that their demonstrations should equal to something, right? And then like in Iran, right, they execute a woman like really, really horrifically, because in Iran, they don't just kill you, they have fun with it. Okay. So what happened? People came onto the streets, right? And they're getting jailed and hurt, but they feel that they have to stand up. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So, you know, it's hard. So not all of us have the gusto and the guts, you know what I mean, to stand up, but at least to stop for a second and say like a kapitel Tehillim for the world. Just like you're saying Shemona Esrei, to stop for a second and say Hashem, like it's really unacceptable. Please, God, like the stuff that's going on right now is beyond scary cuckoo, right? Just because it's so immorally gross, right? Like for us to stop and to understand that we have responsibility, like on a national level, and especially for Jewish people, like things going on in Israel, terrorist attack, like we have to stop. You have to stop for a minute and say, a lot of us know Tehillim now by heart. And if you don't know any Tehillim by heart, just to stop for a minute and say, Hashem, please, Hashem Yisparach, like, you know, these are our brothers and our sisters. Like, please don't let buses blow up. You know, don't let people get killed. Don't like what Gina's saying, like, right? Because in other words, what's going on, Gina, is that a lot of the murder and the death and the this and the that, it's so complex. It's such a complex story. And some of it is just, you know, yes, Hashem lets it happen because the actions of man have put it into place. And there's no man that's actions have made it stop. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Right? Like it's so deep. Like, I don't even know if we can get to the depth of it. But what we can get to the depth of is that we can't just ignore it. Because if you ignore it, then there is a consequence to pay. Do you see what I'm saying? right? It's just a consequence that happens. I don't even know if the word is to pay. It's just the way it works. Okay. Okay, so let me just see.
Gail,
Yeah, please.
we,
Yes.
you said we have to pray. We have to daven for it to stop. People, we are praying. We are praying that all
Right.
of the terror in Israel is stopped,
So
and
we
we
have
are
to keep
praying.
praying. We have to keep praying unless we can
Okay,
come
but
up
it's
with
not as if nobody is
no,
saying
I'm
anything.
not saying not. I'm not saying not. I'm saying, but we just have to remember this. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you extra. I'm not saying not. I'm saying we are praying. So pray some more. We have to do good deeds for it. We have to, do you know what I'm saying? Like this is that it sounds funny, but this is the only ammunition we really have. That's what I'm trying. You see it, like you just see it. This is our only real ammunition, right? It's our only real ammunition. Because again, when the like,
But at what point will it be enough? Will Hashem
I
hear
don't know.
us?
That's
When
Hashem.
Mashiach
That's Hashem,
comes,
right? I don't know.
When
or
will
before.
Mashiach come?
It
What will
doesn't
trigger
matter.
Mashiach to
No,
come?
You're wrong. You have to just keep going. That's exactly what happened in Mitzrayim. Do you know what I mean? And you want to like,
And in Germany.
yeah, and in everywhere. It's all, but in Mitzrayim, they got out in the end. They got out. What does it say? They really cried. They really had it. Like they got used to it, you know, like everything in life we get used to. It's true, right? So finally they weren't used to it anymore. That was enough. You know what I mean? And finally they really give that last big. It's like, you know, when you're giving birth, right? So some people give birth and it's a second. You know, I got like, you know, my daughter-in-law, you can't get her clothes off. It's so fast. Like you really can't. It's crazy. All right. And then other people, one daughter was sitting hours and hours and hours, and even the pushing was hours and hours, right? Right, and she's screaming and pushing and screaming. She's yelling, "When is it?" Right, the same idea. Okay, so we know that okay, so here is, let me just think. I just want, because there was something very beautiful that I wanted to teach you here. Right, okay. So now, and it's interesting, like David HaMelech didn't even know. Oh, okay. So David HaMelech didn't even know at the end that the city was wiped out like that. Like he had no idea that Shaul HaMelech would do such a thing. Like this is beyond, do you know what I mean? This was beyond anything. This wasn't something that he even had in his consciousness that such a thing could happen. Okay, so this was like unbelievable. Okay, so now we just have to be very careful. So now the Mishnah tells you, these are really beautiful Dvar Torah. The Mishnah tells you there are three things. Okay, three things that if you think about, you won't sin. Okay, so I'm going to give you two interpretations. Okay, so the first interpretations, three things that if you would think about, you wouldn't sin. One, know what is above you. Two, know that there is a seeing eye and a hearing ear. And all your deeds are recorded in the divine book. So I'm going to say it again. So I want you to help me with this. I'm going to ask you, okay? So Mishnah says, know these three things and you won't come to sin. Know that there is something above you, right? A seeing eye, a hearing ear, and that everything is recorded and written in the divine book. What does that mean to you?
Hashem is in control.
Okay, Hashem is in control and
he sees, he hears, he writes it down or he records it, and it's all there.
It's all there. What is the it that is all there? Everything that you
have done, be it
yes.
good or bad.
Yes. Okay,
bad.
excellent. And I'm very happy you said what you said, because some people think it means only the bad. No, it's also all the good. Like, in other words, all of your actions, and like it's sometimes hard to hear this, like, you know, it gives you the heebie-jeebies when you listen to this. Like, or tell me how you feel. How do you feel when you think about this idea? Like Hashem is like writing down and recording everything that you do, that you are doing, good and bad. How does it make you feel?
Self-conscious.
Good and bad. Good for the good that I've done and bad for the naughty things I've done.
Nervous. Oh.
was amazing. Okay, that was amazing. Okay, so you feel good because, right? And but what do you really know? What does it mean? That Hashem really loves you. He thinks you're very important. He thinks that what you do matters. What you do has consequences. You're not just a blob. You're not just a rock. You're not just a pebble. You're not just a flower. You're not just here today and gone tomorrow. He's telling you, like, you are a creative force that can either make the world better or not. And in the end of it all, we'll let you know. It's the end of it all. It won't be just a, and it's very hard, like, especially now, like, a lot of people are passing away, people's parents, even young people, even this people, even that people. And you look back and you see how quickly people are forgotten. Like, I hate to say it, but it's like, it's not so easy. Like, sometimes you think about it and you're like, they're just forgotten. They're just replaced. I went to someone's house today. The mother-in-law passed away, just giving all the furniture. Nobody wants it. Nobody cares about it. Like, none of the, grandchildren aren't interested. They don't have any big sentimental feelings towards their, the boobies, whatever. They don't even want their pictures. How many people, like, they're not interested? I don't care what I looked like when I was 10. I don't need 25 pictures of me in camp. You know what I mean? Like, right, you're in your whatever, you're a already grown person. The pictures you care about is your own little baby. You're not, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, all, yeah, it's really scary.
Your baby one day throws away everything that he had,
Exactly.
the dad had, a mom had.
Exactly.
And so it goes on.
And so it goes on, and so it goes on. But here we say, stops in one place. Hashem has it. He keeps all this. He has all the treasures. He keeps it. And he looks at it and he just says to you, good job. And then he says, well, maybe a couple things you went wrong. We're going to send you into soulful rehab. We'll give you some soul therapy. And Ritz Hashem, going to be just fine. And like, it's really, so sometimes like it could be very scary, but there's a part of it that isn't. There's a part of it that's very nice. You know what I mean? When you look the other way. So that is one idea. Okay, so that's one idea of what this Mishnah means. But now the Baal Shem Tov is going to give you a completely different idea. And that completely different idea is going to go into this context of how, the Jewish people in David HaMelech suffered during those 3 years of the famine. So what does the Baal Shem Tov say? He looks at it completely different. Okay, so he says, look at 3 things and you won't come to sin. So 1, know what is above you. Which means there is a God who choreographs every single thing in your life. Very interesting. Okay, so know what is above you. Someone who choreographs your entire life, who lets you see what you're supposed to see, who lets you hear what you're supposed to hear. Okay, right? And it is very, very interesting. It's all coming from Hashem. And if you see something that's broken, what does Hashem want from you?
Go and fix it.
And if you hear about something that's broken, what does Hashem want you to do? Fix it.
Try and fix
So
it.
it's very, very interesting. So even if you're like normal person, la la la, and you hear an ambulance or you see a Hatzalah, Hashem wanted you to hear that. Like other streets, nobody saw the ambulance. Other streets, nobody saw the Hatzalah. If you saw it, then it was meant for you to hear it and to see it. So what would Hashem want from you?
To pray for whoever has been either ill or hurt or something,
to just
for their
Hashem.
recovery.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a true story. We're doing the ideas of the world to come, right? On Sunday, we're doing Life After Life. So this is a true story. I heard it on the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. So these are from the people who actually were in it. So it's a crazy story. So it's like in New York. So it's a Jewish woman and she was driving on the highway and suddenly everything stopped because there was a really bad accident. Okay, a really bad, incredible accident. And you know how the cars, what's that called? They rubberneck, right? Because everybody's like turning around to see what happened. So she looked to see, And she saw that this lady was laying down on the floor, like it was serious. And she saw that this lady was wearing like a tichel. Okay, so she knew it was a Jewish lady. So it's interesting. She pulled off to the shoulder, right? And she opened her Tehillim and she just sat there and started to say Tehillim. The true story. Okay, she started to say Tehillim, all right? And after a while, of course, she had to go back home. So she goes back on, right? And she leaves. I don't know, like 2 months later, 3 months later. She's at like one of these events. You know how we always have these like ladies events and people come from different places, okay?
Yeah.
And this lady is staring at her and staring at her. She's like, what? Like, my slip on, under my skirt, like what's going on? If something on my teeth, like she just keeps staring at her. And then finally she gets up and she goes over to her and she goes, do you know me? And the lady says, I've never met you. I don't think I know you. She goes, I saw you. She goes, what are you talking about? And then she starts telling her, October 13th, blah, blah, blah. Were you on the highway when there was this terrible, terrible accident? And she says, yeah, I was. She goes, did you stop to say Tehillim? I said, yeah, I was. I said, you said Tehillim for me. I was the person lying on the floor. I saw my soul go up. I was looking down at my body and I was going to be taken. And then your Tehillim started floating up. Could you believe this story? Your Tehillim started flowing up.
Goodness.
And I went back into my body. You saved my life.
Goodness.
It's a true story. Like it's an unbelievable reality. So this is what we're saying. Why is it that Hashem made a broken world? Like Gina's, you're asking such good questions. Why did Hashem make a broken world? Why did he make a broken world? So that we would be partners. The Ramchal says, so that you would be partners with Hashem. You would be creative partners with Hashem and try to fix it. So the Torah is telling you, like, you just see something, it's not an accident. It was meant for you to see it. You just hear something, it's not an accident. It was meant for you to hear it and see what you could do about it. So tell another story in Sifrei Tzadikim, okay? There's a story about these two sisters. They lived in Poland and they were like this, they loved each other, connected, they did everything together. And when they got married, like how Mrs. Hochman said, like, it's not like anybody had big houses and big rooms. They got married and the two couples lived together in one house. Okay, that's how it was. Like, it's not that there was tons of space. Like, we're very lucky. Okay, so the two couples lived together and one sister, Nebuch, died. Like she died not too much after they were married, okay? The other sister, she was so zerbrochen, like she couldn't. And so what happened is the sister came to her in a dream. The sister came to her in a dream. And the sister, she said, oh, how is it? How is it up there? How is it up there? She said, it's so awesome. And you wouldn't believe the judgment up here. Things that you would never think. So she said, what do you mean? So she goes, do you remember a long time ago when we were young, there was a rabbi who came to visit the city and he was looking where the address was for the shul that he was supposed to speak in. She goes, yeah. So she says to her, remember both of us at the same time, we took our fingers and said, over there. She said, do you know how much reward I'm getting for just pointing my finger over there just for that chesed? Like, in other words, somebody stops you and asks you for help, like a silly thing. Like, do you know where this is? Do you know where that is? That happens all the time. You know, a carpenter, you know what this, do you know how many times, like, it's like just these little things. And there's a part of you that goes, oh, like I have to text this person, this guy's name. Like, oh, it's another little, you know what I mean? Like you're having a very busy day and somebody texts you, what's the recipe for your cauliflower? The last thing you want to do, right? It's like, I'm being honest. It'll take 2 minutes for you to go and get this cauliflower recipe. And you're like, ugh. Hashem understands, like she said, the way the judgment works is beyond. So I'm sure, like for the negative things we do, I'm sure Hashem says, you know what? They're on home field advantage. Believe me, if you're the kind of person, so really practice trying to judge people favorably, then Hashem will go out of his way to judge you favorably. Do you see what I mean? And it's just like such beautiful ideas. So what's going on here? Okay, so he's saying like, what we have to do is like when we hear it and we see it to really try to take an action. And even just going, like, that's so sad. It's still a step because it's empathy. But, just if you can extend yourself that little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to end here because there's like a lot of beautiful ideas. We'll do more next week, but I really thought this was such a beautiful Mishnah. And I love that idea, do you know what I mean, of knowing and exactly what Marie said also, Hashem, you will fix it, right? What you see, you should fix, what you hear, you should fix, and it will be recorded. Like Marie said, if you fixed it and if you didn't fix it, right? It will be recorded in the book. So it's just like a beautiful idea. So Sandy, so let's say our Tehillim, because this is a perfect example. Okay, not all of us can sit around and make 1,000 shidduchim. We try, like I bet you everybody says, I know someone who knows someone, we're all trying, but it's just so hard to move the needle forward. But even if we can't find a person for another person, the fact that we're just even saying this Tehillim, we may think, once a week we do this. But in Hashem's world, this is like pointing the finger, when saying there's the building you need. Okay. So let me see. Okay. So Sandy, you're going to say it and we'll say it with you. And let me just stop the recording.